So Elvis Presley, a racist, cultural thief, or an ally? A brother in rhythm, even? Some of the biggest black musicians of his day actually said so. What if the story we've all heard is like seeing only one side of a coin and there's a whole other side we're missing? Elvis Presley, the king. Just saying the name conjures up those electrifying performances, doesn't it? That music that changed everything, a cultural impact that still reverberates today. But let's be honest, for decades there's been this dark cloud hovering over his legacy. Was he racist? Did he just snatch black artists' music and run without giving credit? Was he the poster boy for cultural appropriation? These are heavy questions, the kind that have really split opinions down the middle. Now, we're not here to just reopen old wounds or stir up dusty arguments. We want to be like historical detectives, digging into what actually happened, the history, what people who were there said, what Elvis himself said, to unearth the truth about his relationships with black musicians, because they didn't just shape his sound. In many cases, they were his friends, his peers. And his role in bringing their music to a segregated world? Well, it's as tangled as a ball of yarn. It's time to get past the easy sound bites and find out what really went on. All right, let's tackle the elephant in the room first. That infamous shoeshine quote. You've probably heard it. The story that Elvis said, "The only thing Negroes can do for me is shine my shoes and buy my records." If he actually said that, yeah, that's a massive problem, an undeniable stain on his character. But here's a crucial detail that often gets lost in the heat. This quote was thoroughly investigated and debunked, all the way back in 1957. Jet magazine, a highly respected black publication, put their associate editor Louis Robinson on the case, like a detective on a mission. He dug deep, interviewed Elvis himself, who flat out denied ever saying such a thing, and even checked records to see if Elvis had even been in the city where the remark was supposedly made. Well, he hadn't. Jet concluded there was zero proof Elvis ever uttered those words, or any racist statement for that matter. Actually, they painted him as a young white guy who respected black artists and fostered equality.
We had no idea that there would be any racial flag regarding it. Our first racial encounter was when we went to Texas. Elvis was told by his people that, well, you can leave the black girls home. You don't have to bring them. So Elvis wasn't going to do the Astrodome unless his girls could be with him. And he demanded that we be given the star treatment. We had to be in our convertible where everybody could see us, and our little blonde could drive us. And that was his statement. You don't like it? Deal with it, or I'm not going to be there. And I thought that was very big of him.
So why has this rumor stuck around like super glue for over 60 years? Well, biographer Peter Guralnick notes that Elvis kind of became a lightning rod, attracting broader legitimate resentments about all the unfairness in music and society in a deeply segregated America. And let's be clear, the 1950s music industry was systemically racist, top to bottom.
Well, soul has no color, has no barrier. But I also had a lot of good people that brought out a lot. I want to pay a tribute to a good friend of mine, Brother Elvis Presley, who opened up a lot of doors for me to get through.
Interestingly, some of the harshest criticism of Elvis back then came from the white establishment, precisely because he was a white man singing what they considered black music and performing with a style that horrified conservative white America. They threw around words like animalism and vulgarity, pretty clear racial coding there. They were terrified that Elvis and rock and roll in general would lead to racial integration. So, yeah, this whole Elvis and race thing, it's like an onion with many layers, complex and deeply tied to the era's racial anxieties. Elvis's own words. I never sang like this until I heard Arthur Crudup. So where did Elvis's distinctive sound even come from? To get that, you gotta rewind to his childhood. Born in Tupelo, Mississippi, then moving to Memphis, Tennessee, Elvis grew up poor, often in neighborhoods where black and white families lived side by side. This wasn't some fancy, sheltered upbringing isolated from black culture. It was a full immersion, like steeping in a rich musical tea. He went to black churches, absorbing that soul-stirring power of gospel music. His school friend, Billy Welch, recalled Elvis rushing home every day to listen to Sister Rosetta Tharpe and other black gospel singers on the radio. He frequented Beale Street in Memphis, that legendary hub of blues and R&B, soaking in the sounds of artists like Son House and Jimmy Reed. This wasn't like homework for him. These were experiences that shaped him from the ground up. His high school pal Buzzy Forbes even noted they'd go to colored beer joints to get sodas and listen to rhythm and blues. And here's the thing, Elvis never tried to hide where his inspiration came from. He was always upfront about the black artists who lit his creative fire. Down in Tupelo, Mississippi, he told a reporter for the Charlotte Observer in 1956, "I used to listen to Arthur Crudup, the blues singer who originated That's All Right, Elvis's first record. Crudup," he said, "used to bang his box the way I do now, and I said if I ever got to the place where I could feel all old Arthur felt, I'd be a music man like nobody ever saw." To Jet magazine in 1957, the same publication that debunked that racist slur, Elvis was candid. "A lot of people seem to think I started this business, but rock and roll was here a long time before I came along. That's all right, mama. I remembered that song because I heard Arthur Big Boy Crudup sing it, and I thought I would like to try it." He also mentioned wanting to sing like Billy Kenny of the Ink Spots, admiring his high, smooth style. He openly talked about his love for Fats Domino, stating in a 1957 interview and in a press conference in Vegas, 1969, "Nobody can sing that kind of music like colored people. Let's face it, I can't sing it like Fats Domino can. I know that."
I play this for the great Elvis Presley, ladies and gentlemen.
These weren't just one-off comments. They were a consistent thread running through his career. He knew where his music came from, and because of that, in those early days, a lot of folks in the black community really looked up to him. The Bluesman and Beyond, genuine connections and mutual respect. Now that whole idea of Elvis simply stealing music, it starts to crumble like a poorly built house of cards when you look at the actual personal relationships and mutual respect clear between him and many black musicians of the era. These weren't just distant idols, they were contemporaries, and in some cases, friends. BB.King, the undisputed king of the blues, knew Elvis from his early days hanging around Sun Studios and frequenting Beale Street. King consistently defended Elvis against accusations of racism and theft. "I remember Elvis as a young man hanging around the Sun Studios," King stated. "Even then, I knew this kid had a tremendous talent. His phraseology, his way of looking at a song, was as unique as Sinatra's." King emphasized that Elvis was friendly. "I remember Elvis distinctly because he was handsome, quiet and polite to a fault, always called me sir."
Yeah. I saw that he had everything. The looks, he had the talent.
He had the rhythm,
He had
the soul.
Had everything. To me, he had everything.
BB King often said, Elvis didn't steal any music from anyone. He just had his own interpretation of the music he'd grown up on. Same is true for everyone. I think Elvis had integrity. He pointed out that Elvis, growing up in the same cultural environment, naturally incorporated those influences. In 2010, King stated unequivocally, "Let me tell you the definitive truth about Elvis Presley and racism. With Elvis, there was not a single drop of racism in that man. And when I say that, believe me, I should know." King also recalled Elvis attending the all-black WDIA Goodwill Reviews in Memphis in 1956 and 1957, events where Elvis was mobbed by enthusiastic black fans. "For a young white boy to show up in an all-black function took guts," King noted. Elvis even helped BB King secure a gig at the Hilton in Las Vegas in 1972 when Elvis was the headliner. Little Richard, the architect of rock and roll, had a nuanced but ultimately appreciative view. While he rightfully pointed out the racial disparities in the industry, I believe that if Elvis had been black, he wouldn't have been as big as he was. "If I was white, do you know how huge I'd be?" He also called Elvis an integrator. Richard acknowledged Elvis was a blessing. They wouldn't let black music through. He opened the door for black music. Elvis is one of the greatest performers who ever lived in this world. In 1970, he even said, "I thank the Lord for sending Elvis to open that door so I could walk down the road, you understand?"
Elvis Presley.
I love him. That's my buddy, my baby. I love him. We are very good friends, and it was a very great loss to the music world. Elvis is one of the greatest performers ever lived in this world, and electrifying, elevated. Oh, he's just, you can't say enough. He's just beautiful. I love Elvis.
James Brown, the godfather of soul, considered Elvis his brother. He said, "I wasn't just a fan, I was his brother. He said I was good, and I said he was good. We never argued about that." Elvis was a hard worker, dedicated, and God loved him. I love him and hope to see him in heaven. There'll never be another like that soul brother. Brown attended Elvis's funeral and even recorded a tribute version of Love Me Tender. He recounted Elvis attending one of his shows in Hollywood when Brown was struggling to draw crowds, saying Elvis came out twice for me and, well, you couldn't get in. Brown also said, "Elvis and I used to sing spirituals together."
Well, soul has no color, has no barrier. But I also had a lot of good people that brought out a lot. I want to pay a tribute to a good friend of mine, Brother Elvis Presley, who opened up a lot of doors for me to get through. Elvis was a pioneer, and he came out 1 year before I did. He was out in '55, Heartbreak Hotel. And then I come in '56. And Elvis and I were very good friends up until the last minute of his bodily life. But he'll always live because of the fact he was such a beautiful man. I don't care what nobody say, I know Elvis. You know, there are a lot of rumors. Elvis and I sang spiritual together. And he'd buy any movie that I'd make, any film, he'd buy the film and close the theater up and show it. I love Elvis for being a man. I love him for what he'd done for the people and the chance he gave me. He kept me from being number one. I was number one soul and he was number one world, and it took a long time, but it's almost like the two rental cars. It made me try harder, and I love Elvis for it, and we'll always pray for Elvis.
Jackie Wilson, another dynamic black performer, pushed back against the idea of theft, stating, "A lot of people have accused Elvis of stealing the black man's music, when in fact, almost every black solo entertainer copied his stage mannerisms from Elvis." And then there's the foundational influence of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the godmother of rock and roll. A queer black woman wielding an electric guitar in the 1930s and 40s, Tharpe was a true pioneer, blending gospel with secular rhythms in a way that laid the groundwork for rock and roll. Elvis was an avowed fan from his youth, listening to her on the radio daily. Gail Wald, Tharpe's biographer, said, "She had a major impact on artists like Elvis Presley. When you see Elvis Presley singing songs early in his career, I think you should imagine he is channeling Rosetta Tharpe." Gordon Stoker of the Jordanaires, Elvis's backing vocal group, confirmed, "Elvis loved Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Not only did he dig her guitar picking, that's really what he dug, but he dug her singing, too." Tharpe herself, when asked about rock and roll, reportedly said, "Oh, these kids in rock and roll, this is just sped-up rhythm and blues. I've been doing that forever." These aren't just isolated anecdotes. They paint a consistent picture, like connecting the dots to reveal a clear image of an artist who moved within a multicultural musical world, admired its creators, and was by many accounts admired in return. Look, there's no getting around it. Black music, gospel, blues, R&B, and country was the absolute bedrock of Elvis Presley's revolutionary sound. He was like a musical chef, taking these incredible ingredients, blending them with country, and creating something new, something explosive that resonated with a generation. His very first Sun Records release, That's All Right, was a cover of Arthur Big Boy Crudup's blues song, transformed into rockabilly. The B-side was a bluegrass song turned into a jumping blues. That fusion was his genius. But the impact of that fusion, that's where the conversation gets really nuanced. Because Elvis was white, he had access to mainstream radio play, television exposure, and promotional machinery that was largely denied to black artists in the segregated 1950s. When he sang Hound Dog, a song first recorded with raw power by Big Mama Thornton, though written by white songwriters Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, His version achieved a colossal success that Thornton's, despite its brilliance, could not in that era. That's an undeniable reality of the music industry's racial bias. However, many contemporaries argued that Elvis's unprecedented popularity also had an unintended yet positive consequence. It kicked open doors. By bringing black musical styles, albeit filtered through his own interpretation, to a massive white audience, he exposed them to sounds they might never have otherwise encountered, acting like a wedge holding open a previously closed door for others. Little Richard was particularly vocal about this, calling Elvis an integrator, and a blessing, because they wouldn't let black music through. Elvis opened the door for black music. And get this, black DJs on black-oriented radio stations routinely played Elvis alongside Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, and others because their young black audiences liked him. Between 1956 and 1958, Elvis had 22 songs in the top 15 of Billboard's R&B charts, which tracked black listenership. Now, this doesn't erase the injustice faced by black artists who didn't get their due. Not at all. But it does suggest that Elvis's role was more complex than simple theft. He acted as a conduit, like a pipeline channeling water to a wider area, and in doing so, inadvertently or not, helped expand the audience for the very music that inspired him. Conclusion? Elvis was not a racist and didn't steal black music. When you really look at it, Elvis Presley's connection with black musicians and black musical traditions wasn't the simple story of theft or overt racism that persistent debunked narrative might suggest. The evidence paints a far more intricate picture, one of deep, early immersion in black culture, a genuine love for gospel, blues, and R&B, and consistent public acknowledgement of his black musical influences. Iconic black artists like BB.King, Little Richard, and James Brown, men who knew him, worked in the same era, and understood the racial dynamics of the music industry firsthand, largely defended Elvis, often describing him as a friend and ally, or an integrator, who helped bring black musical forms to a wider, segregated audience. And that awful racist remark attributed to him? Thoroughly debunked by the black press itself, way back in '57. So it's pretty clear the story of Elvis and black musicians is way more complicated than just a few angry headlines or a simple yes-no answer, right? After hearing the truth about Elvis, what do you think about Elvis's legacy? Does it change how you see him or the music from that pivotal time? We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you found this deep dive into music history useful, do us a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories like this, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss what we've got coming up next.